Welcome to Redtastic. Story 1. I've heard stories of fathers falling in love instantly with their children the moment they set eyes on them. I, female 30, craved and wanted to see my husband, male 33, hold our baby with so much love and excitement. I anticipated the birth of my child. During tough times, one of the things that kept me going was the thought of my baby coming into the world, and my husband holding our little one in his hands with so much joy and love. When my baby was born, I was initially taken aback because he was so white. Same with his hair. I knew immediately that he was albino, but in no way did it diminish my love for him. Oh boy, my husband and his family had an opposite reaction I didn't see coming. My husband tried to hide his displeasure upon having an albino child the moment he saw our baby, but I could just tell he wasn't happy. I've never been able to understand why. I still do not. His family was having none of it, especially my sister-in-law. The first thing she said upon seeing the baby was, "I've always known you were a cheat, but I didn't think you would go as far as giving my brother a bastard child." I had always known my sister-in-law didn't support the relationship between her brother and I, but I still didn't think she would take it that far. It was shocking that on the day my baby was born, I was being accused of cheating, and my baby was literally called a bastard. Nothing I'd have ever imagined in my wildest dreams. What hurt me the most was the fact that my husband was nowhere to be found. I had no one to support me. A few hours later, my mother-in-law also came along. She picked up my baby and dropped him back like he was a hot coal. I tried explaining to her that I had an albino grandparent, but she did not listen. I didn't know when I burst into tears, but all they did was laugh at me and intensify their taunts. I was asked to take the baby to his father. The birth of my child was an emotional roller coaster. I went from being tremendously happy to being confused, then finally sadness. My baby's birth, which should have been a joyous occasion, turned sore. The first few days after the birth of my baby, Trey, my husband barely acknowledged my child. Later on, my Trey's initial resistance and indifference turned into mistreatment towards me and our baby. It was heartbreaking to say the least. He would stay out for days. He would shout at my baby to keep shut when he cried. He didn't want my baby in his space at all. All bills regarding my baby were paid by me. I received absolutely no support from him. I had a baby and a husband, but I had never felt so alone and unwanted. My parents and siblings lived so far away from us. The best they could do was video call me, and I didn't even tell them anything was wrong so they wouldn't worry. My mother and sister-in-law came over far too often, not to help me, but to make things more difficult for me. Whenever they came around, they left my mental health and sanity worse than they met it. Every time I tried to talk to Trey, it seemed like I was talking to a rock. He just didn't want to listen. He even moved out of our room. In not so many words, my home was synonymous with hell. I didn't know what to do or how to handle the situation. I just hoped he'd come around or something. 3 weeks after Trevor's delivery, he had a fever in the middle of the night. I rushed to my Trey's room to let him know our baby needed to be taken to the hospital. I knocked and banged the door, but he didn't even respond. I kid you not. After several minutes, he shouted at me to stop disturbing his sleep. With tears in my eyes, fear and sadness in my heart, I rushed Trevor to the hospital. It was just a mild fever, but I was tired of begging my husband and being a victim. When I got home, I asked Trey for a DNA test. His response was, "I already know the baby's not mine. Why would I waste my time doing that? Just take the baby out of my sight." He refused a DNA test. Honestly, I just cannot explain why Trey acted that way. It was a side of him I had never seen. I just think it's irrational to act that way because your child is albino. It was no longer hurtful. I was furious. Today, my phone started buzzing with notifications. I checked my phone only to find out that my sister-in-law called me out on social media for being a cheat and bringing an albino bastard child to her brother. My parents and siblings have finally seen what I tried to hide from them, and they've called for me to come home after I explained all that has been happening. But I have something to prove. I have finally convinced Trey to let us take the DNA, and he agreed. He said he's convinced it would finally show the world that I brought a bastard albino baby to him. Oh dear, my mother and sister-in-law have fed him a load of crap. The test results will be in tomorrow, then I would prove my innocence and take my baby out of this toxic environment. Reddit, my fingers are crossed in anticipation to see my husband and his family's reaction to the result. Update. DNA results are in. Hey Reddit, remember my post about the DNA test? The results are in, and the bomb has officially detonated. So here's what happened. The test confirmed what I always knew, that Trey is Trevor's father. I'm talking about 99.9% certainty. My husband's reaction? Shock doesn't even cover it. As soon as Trey found out, his world crumbled. He called, he pleaded, and he cried. But it was too late. I had already left with Trevor, seeking refuge at my parents' place. I've not yet disclosed my whereabouts. His countless calls and messages are piling up, but I'm done being treated like a ghost in my own home. I deserve better, and so does Trevor. My family support has been my backbone through all of this. They are rallying around me, embracing Trevor with open arms. It's a far cry from the hostility we faced back at Trey's. But my next move should be filing for a divorce. How do I get back on my feet? I'm sorry the birth of your child brought about this unexpected outcome. Your husband, I hope you're going to divorce him, is a terrible husband. He's also an idiot. Just because his child is albino doesn't mean he's a bastard. It's a genetic mutation. And if he had doubts, the first thing he should have done was do a DNA test. Instead of acting like a douche and allowing his family to treat you terribly when you literally just gave birth to a child. Then they had the guts to put it on social media. I really hope you divorce that man and never have anything to do with his family ever again. You and your son definitely deserve better. Enjoy the love and support of your family and get back on your feet at your pace. Good luck, OP. Story 2. I, 20 female, am a mother of triplets who are only 2 months old. I never expected ever in my life that I'd be a mother to triplets, so when I first became pregnant, it was definitely the last thing on my mind. I'm home with babies all day long and had to even transfer my education to online. Sometimes I just need some fresh air, especially when I can't get them to stop crying, and I find myself getting super frustrated to the point of tears. It's honestly so hard, and the dad isn't here to help, as is either at work or at school. My fiancé's 24. Parents rented us a main floor apartment, so when I step outside, I'm literally just sitting on the chair right beside the door. Plus, I have a baby monitor step up in their room and it has a camera on it. I can literally see them and hear them, so if anything happened, I would be able to quickly get to them. Being able to step outside for a few minutes to take a breather is really important to me because I start to have mini panic attacks when I can't get them to stop crying, and I get really frustrated because I just feel super overwhelmed. Being able to go outside just gives me a chance to calm down. My fiancé came home to me sitting outside while the babies were crying and freaked out on me, calling me a horrible mom and a bunch of other names that I'm not gonna list here. He thinks that I was being super neglectful and putting the babies in harm's way, and even told his parents, and now everyone seems to be really against me. I grew up in the system. My fiancé's family is the only family I have ever known, so it hurts that they are so upset with me. But I really don't think I was doing anything wrong or putting my babies in harm's way. But they seem to think otherwise. So here I am wondering if I should apologize for my actions, or if I am the a-hole in the situation. Update. I decided to show my fiancé this thread. At first, he was really upset with me for sharing our personal problems with strangers on the internet, even though it's anonymous. But in the end, when he had a chance to calm down and hear me and all of you guys out, he actually apologized and promised me he would be more involving with parenting and even is willing to take parenting classes, which I'll hold him to. I can't believe how much attention this post got. Plus the award again, thank you so much. You're not the a-hole, OP. It saddened me to hear that your fiancé called you a bad mother and then tattled on you to his family when all you were doing was just catching a break that you desperately needed. You shouldn't be shamed for that. Having one child is a lot of work, but having 3 without any help? That sounds like a great deal of work, and I'm proud of you for not having a mental breakdown. I'm glad your fiancé apologized and decided to change after seeing your post. He needed to. And if he doesn't, don't hesitate to leave. I hope you'll have more support and help from now on though. You need it. Now for some comments. Well, I'm glad your fiancé will step up and actually help out, where you can mentally have a break when needed. He better make his family understand that you're not a bad mom, and was obviously overwhelmed since he made you look like the bad guy in the first place. Seems like he's not a decent fiancé, so I would suggest don't get married for a while. And make sure he will be better and that he's the one for you, because I've heard that divorce can be difficult as F. Not the a-hole. Oh mama, I have one 7-month-old and sometimes I have to briefly and safely step away. In fact, it is actually recommended by pediatricians to do just this for the safety of the babies. Motherhood is so insanely overwhelming, and at 2 months, your hormones are still all over the place. I saw your update and I truly hope you're getting more support. I also encourage you to get screened for PPD. Worst case scenario, you waste a few hours and get confirmation that you don't have it. Best case, you get treated when you do have it. You got this. Not the a-hole. 2-month-old triplets and school. I'm astounded that you can write coherently, let alone have the good sense to remove yourself to a safe place, to calm down and regain composure while keeping your kids safe. Dad needs a real dose of reality. A single newborn baby is enough to exhaust any normal human being. There is something I can't imagine. You need support, and the next time he utters one single word of bad mother or any kind of name, he gets the kids for the entire weekend while you go somewhere else and rest. And his interfering relatives, well, they can take a hike. Story 3. I was best friends with this girl, let's call her Amy, for 13 years. We moved in together in 2018. In August 2019, we moved to a new place. Amy and the guy started dating, and that's when things took a turn. They were super touchy. I came home from work and they were on top of each other on the couch. He would kiss her neck, and as I would talk to them, and I could hear them doing it every night. I hated my job in January 2020, so I quit. I stayed with my boyfriend because we both were looking for new jobs. My roomies had school and work every day, and I would only see them late at night, so this made sense. I would still see Amy every few days, but that wasn't enough for her. Amy texted me saying that I don't value my friends and relationships don't last if I don't have friends. I finally told her how I felt weird every time her boyfriend was around. I tried to ignore it for months, but it was too much PDA. She got really mad when I told her how I felt about him, and she freaked. She sent me paragraphs on how terrible of a person I was, and I would get them every hour. I was so upset over all of this. I even had to turn my phone off multiple times so I wouldn't cry. I hated that my best friend thought this about me. After a few days, I got a text from Amy asking if I have calmed down. Me calm down? I never said a single bad thing about her throughout the whole text fight. I asked if I could call her to resolve all of this, and her response was, "There's nothing to be resolved." I knew there was no way of fixing this. I realized that I wasn't going to be able to pay for rent anymore, so I started researching the best way to get out of that apartment. At this time, there were 6 months left on our lease. The best way to get out and not financially hurt my roommate was to sublet my room. I called Amy and we talked about everything, and she apologized and said she was just being dramatic. She didn't want to lose her best friend, and I forgave her. Amy told me she was okay with subletting my room. As I was trying to narrow it down, these girls wanted pictures of my room. I drove to the apartment to take pictures. I ran into my roommate and she told me that they changed their minds and aren't okay with me subleasing my room. I was super confused, because that call with Amy was 12 hours before and she was on board with it. That left me with no other options, and I knew I messed up when I quit that job. Later that night, Amy called and told me she would be willing to pay for the last 6 months of my rent, but she would sue me for that amount later. In shock, I hung up. She said I was ruining her life and all of her financial goals. She wanted to take everything to court and sue me. I used my tax return unemployment to pay for rent in a place I didn't live in anymore. In July, I got the last of my stuff. I said bye to her and she never replied back. That night, she blocked me on all social media. Am I the a-hole? Now for some comments. Not the a-hole at all. Amy shouldn't expect you to listen to every demand of her. Especially when they're that ridiculous. You have every right to be happy the friendship is over. Not the a-hole. Let it go, move on. I know it's easier said than done when you think this person is your best friend, but clearly other things were more important to her. Let it go, move on. For the future though, never sort things out over the phone. Make them do it in writing. They get too flippy-floppy when there's no paper trail. I would say a few different things. Not the a-hole for being not comfortable with that level of intimacy with the couple. Not the a-hole for turning your phone off because you were upset. Not the a-hole for the deterioration of a friendship. But also, your friend has the right to be intimate with her partner in her home. Moving out was the right move, and I would strongly consider contacting whoever you rent from to see if they would let you either pay rent directly to them or find a different renter. I'm sorry about how things have changed, but as a whole, it sounds a bit like you're better out of the friendship. Overall, not the a-hole.